Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for August 22nd, 2017. On today's show, we'll be going into the water cooler and talking about Rian Johnson's The Brothers Bloom. In the news, we'll be talking about the passing of Jerry Lewis, Godzilla vs. Kong, a potential horror movie mashup, an R-rated Knight Rider reboot, and new Star Wars and Jurassic Park video games. And in our feature presentation, Pearson and Jacob Hall will join us to discuss the good and the bad of this week's episode and season of Game of Thrones. But with me now is Brad Oman. Brad, how are you doing?
Great.
Over the weekend, Brad, I rewatched Rian Johnson's The Brothers Bloom, which I don't think I've watched since the year it came out. Have you seen the movie?
Oh, yeah, I love that movie. It was one of my favorites that year.
My girlfriend Kitra hasn't seen a lot of the Rian Johnson films, so we've been revisiting. I showed her Brick, and I showed her Brothers Bloom. I remember loving Brick a lot more than Brothers Bloom, but now seeing it today, I mean, Brothers Bloom is not a great movie, but it has so much greatness in it. And I don't know, I really, really believe that this is... a lot of people don't, a lot of people like to praise Looper and Brick and leave out Brothers Bloom, but I think they're missing something. I think that there's some beautiful whimsy, the score in this movie, the acting, there's just so much greatness about. Oh, you said it was one of your favorite movies of that year?
Yeah, I actually think I think the movie is great. Like, I don't think I mean, it doesn't just have greatness in it. I think it's a genuinely fantastic movie. It's, Ruffalo and Adrian Brody are great in it. Rachel Weisz is fantastic in it. The way the story plays out, it's interesting and it's fun. It's engaging. It's never boring, and it's just, yeah, you're right. There's a certain level of whimsy in it that gives it a different feel than movies of that kind usually have.
And I feel like when it came out, it was getting compared to, he was trying to do Wes Anderson. And I feel like people are just comparing it too much against Brick, because Brick was so much its own thing. And this is kind of like a jarring second film. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same as Brick. It's very different.
It's completely different.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I very much enjoy it. As much as I don't think a perfect film, I really just love this film. It's I don't know. I think if I were to say, I think that he set up too many twists for this movie. I think it didn't need that much of a complicated, twisty story near the end. But I would recommend anybody who hasn't seen it, and especially people that are getting excited for The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson, to go revisit The Brothers Bloom. And, after seeing these movies, my girlfriend's like, I don't know what his Star Wars movie is going to be like, because you realize after seeing Brick and Brothers Bloom, Rian Johnson is a very unique filmmaker. Do you know what I mean? It's like his sensibilities, he's a very smart guy, but his sensibilities so far on screen have not been Star Wars in tone, or, do you know what I mean?
No, for sure. You definitely can't pinpoint whether what a Rian Johnson movie is. It doesn't. There's nothing really about his style that is like with Spielberg or Scorsese, where you can pinpoint, that they directed a certain movie. And so I think that's part of what makes him directing Star Wars so exciting, is we don't know entirely what to expect.
Yeah, I think if there's anything that you can pinpoint with Rian Johnson, it's that he's a smart guy, and he always executes things in a clever way that you're not expecting. That, I don't know, I always watch his films and I'm like, oh my god, that's that's such a unique angle on things, and I hope he does that with Star Wars. Also, over the weekend, I had dinner at the Magic Castle. I mentioned on this podcast previously that I am trying out to become a member of the Academy of Magical Arts in Los Angeles. The Magic Castle is a prestigious organization, and I've practiced magic for many years. So, but I mostly just for friends. I don't perform in public, so I've been very nervous to ever try out to become a member of the Magic Castle. And over the weekend, one of my favorite magicians and a listener of this podcast, John Armstrong, who is a 2-time world champion of magic, was gracious enough to invite me to dinner and give me some pointers. By the time you're listening to this on Tuesday morning, I will have already auditioned for the Magic Castle membership committee, and hopefully I've gotten in. Hopefully it's good news, although I've done a lot of internet searching and read a lot of should I say horror stories from other people who have tried out and failed. But fingers crossed that I get in. The Magic Castle is a great place, and I would love to be part of that community. And shout out to John Armstrong for giving me the tips. If I failed, it's his fault. If I got in, it was because my magic was good. But let's move into the news. Over the weekend, Brad, a comic legend passed away. Jerry Lewis died at the age of 91. You were at the story for slashfilm.com. What do we know? Yeah, it's just one of those cases of sad news, as these legends of entertainment are getting older as time goes on, and we're starting to lose more and more of the names that we knew over the years. And Jerry Lewis lived a full life. He died at 91 years old. There was no specific cause of death given, but considering his age and all of the things that he endured health-wise over the years, I think it's just a matter of time catching up with him. And he died peacefully at his home in Las Vegas. And yeah, this is a guy who shaped entertainment for decades. A lot of people obviously know him because of he was a longtime partner of Dean Martin. They worked together for 10 years, doing nightclub stage shows, making movies together. And then after they went their own separate ways in 1956, Jerry Lewis struck out on his own and had his own fledgling movie career as a director, a writer, producer, and star of his own movies. What's interesting about Jerry Lewis, though, is he really experienced like the full breadth of what it is to be a Hollywood star. Coming up out of early show business because his parents were also worked on stage, and having his own time on stage as a teen doing comedy, becoming extremely famous very quickly, venturing out on his own, having a solo career, falling out of the spotlight and not working on movies at all for nearly a decade, trying to get back in the spotlight by directing again, faltering, eventually having a comeback of sorts in the 80s by starring in The King of Comedy from Martin Scorsese. And yeah, he's a true Hollywood star. He became a little bit more controversial as time went on, simply because he always had kind of an old school attitude about politics and politically incorrect humor and those kinds of things. It's one of those things though where you almost you forgive the casual, racism and conservative attitude that your grandparents have because they're older and that's exactly how they grew up, and it's hard to shake those kinds of things. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and so you can't deny, no matter how you felt about that side of him, like this was an entertainer through and through, and he shaped and influenced entertainment and plenty of talented people on screen and behind the camera for years to come. I feel like a lot of people your age and younger, the millennial group that we have talked about on the podcast, probably haven't had that much experience with Jerry Lewis. I know for me, I was exposed to him by my father. I watched like The Nutty Professor, The Ladies' Man, and I always loved his like goofier kind of slapsticky comedy as a kid. As an adult, I kind of grew out of him. But yeah, he's definitely a comedic legend, and it is sad that he is no longer with us. Moving on, the creator of Child's Play has an idea for a Chucky movie where he would meet Freddy Krueger. Brad, you wrote this for Slash Film. What do we know? So Don Mancini is the creator of Child's Play, and he's been making the publicity rounds because there's a direct-to-video sequel coming out called Cult of Chucky, which continues the crazy, murderous antics of the good guys doll that we love to see crack wise and kill people. And in an interview, he with Necronomicast, he talked about this idea he's had for a while to have Chucky meet up with Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Basically, his idea is they would do a horror movie version of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is a movie from the 80s that starred Michael Caine and Steve Martin. And he said it's called Child's Play on Elm Street. And basically what happens is
Chucky ends up in the bedroom of a house on Elm Street, and Freddy meets him there because obviously Freddy loves lurking around Elm Street and messing with people's dreams. And they actually already know of each other. They're fans of each other's work. So they have this friendship there a little bit, but then they soon realize that Elm Street's just not big enough for the two of them to do what they each need to do to be satisfied, and so they end up turning against each other.
I'm not sure that's good enough for a movie.
Yeah, but was Freddy versus Jason good enough for a movie?
No, it wasn't. Although, you know what? With all these studios trying to create these cinematic universes, Universal with their what is it called, the Dark Universe?
Yeah.
Why hasn't New Line? I mean, I guess they did try it out with Freddy versus Jason and Alien versus Predator, but I would love to see like this big horror movie mashup. Why? Like, it doesn't have to be just Chucky versus Freddy. Why not have a movie that has like all the classic horror slasher? I'm not sure how you'd put them together, but
well, I think that's the biggest problem. Is A, how do you get them all together and have it make sense and not feel just like a everything but the kitchen sink scenario? And B, negotiating the rights to have all those characters appear in the same movie. How do the studios take profits from the box office and all that kind of stuff? So it's extremely difficult to work out. However, I could see something like that working out if Ready Player One turns out to be a big hit and people want to see more of this kind of mashup style and cinematic universes. I feel like one of the things I've always lamented about the movie business, because of how long it takes to make a movie and how expensive it is that we don't get to see these one-shot stories that would be like, oh, it would be cool if we could see this happen, because comic books do that all the time, where they have, oh, this is a story that's separate from the normal comic continuity, and it's just let's imagine if this happened. And I wish that it was possible to see that happen in movie form, because I think there's a lot of cool ideas that you could see play out. I mean, there was the idea for 23 Jump Street to be Men in Black meets 21 Jump Street. And I honestly thought that was a cool idea, and it made me wish that there was more of an opportunity to see crossovers like that, no matter how ridiculous they may be, just to see what they would be like.
No, it could be interesting. The only thing I hate about these versus movies is it seems like it always is, it's Freddy versus Jason, or it's Batman versus Superman, and we get to see a fight for like 10 minutes, and then it's them versus some humans of some kind. Do you know what I mean? Or them versus another threat. And like, I want to actually see the movie that they're advertising with the title. I want to see Freddy versus Jason. I want to see Chucky versus Freddy. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's another problem, is they always invent that third group in there. But speaking of the versus movies, Godzilla versus Kong is coming up, and Adam Wingard, the director, is doing press for his Netflix movie, which we also did a roundup on Slash Film. I think did you do the roundup on Slash Film for Death Note?
The early buzz.
Yeah, the early buzz, which is not good, right?
No, yeah, it is not good.
But he's doing a lot of press for Death Note, and people are asking him about his movie, which is the sequel to Godzilla 2 and Kong Skull Island, and it's going to be, Godzilla versus Kong. And in the interviews, you can read the whole piece on Slash Film. We round up a bunch of quotes from Entertainment Weekly, from Comic Book Movie, and from Coming Soon. He talks about how it's going to be a darker movie, that, he wants people to take these characters seriously, and he wants you to be emotionally invested, not just in the human characters, but also the monsters. And he calls this movie a massive monster brawl movie. What do you want to see from Godzilla versus Kong, Brad?
I just want to see monsters going at it against a big city skyline.
Yeah.
That's really all I want. Like, I'm a defender of Kong Skull Island. I think it fit right in, with the B-movie pulpy style of monster movies from decades past. And I would like to...
Kong Skull Island got a lot of criticism for the human story. And you know what? I didn't give a crap about the human story. I just wanted the fun monster action. And when that movie was giving me fun monster action, it was fun. And it was monster action. So I won.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And so I think that if Kong or Godzilla versus Kong can emulate that same kind of spirit and give us something fun that, you know, is worth seeing on the big screen and doesn't get lost with. And this is one of the few times when you hear somebody say this and it makes sense, as I don't want to get lost, you know, in the character development and the humanity of it, because like that's not as important when you're dealing with these two giant movie monsters.
And I was talking before about how you have all these versus movies and you don't have a winner. Wingard, talking to Entertainment Weekly, says, I do want there to be a winner. The original film was very fun, but you feel a little let down that the movie doesn't take a definitive stance. People are still debating now who won in the original movie, you know. So I do want people to walk away from this film feeling like, okay, there is a winner. So that is pleasing to me. But we'll have to see. Based on, you know, I'm a Wingard defender. I like his earlier films. I haven't seen Death Note, but reading these earlier reviews of this Netflix film is not it's not promising at all. Also in the news, David Hasselhoff is promoting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which he makes a small cameo appearance in and in the soundtrack. And he's been talking about how he wants to make a Knight Rider new Knight Rider movie. At first he said he talked to James Gunn about making the movie. Now he says he wants it directed by Robert Rodriguez and he wants it to be an R-rated gritty film like Logan. You wrote the article for slashfilm.com. What do we know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, David Hasselhoff has been making publicity rounds lately because not only does he have that small cameo in Guardians 2, but because of that song on the soundtrack, Guardians Inferno, he stars in the music video along with pretty much the entire cast of Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn wearing all their disco wardrobe and that kind of thing. And so he's been tagging along with some of the interviews that have been doing for home video rounds. And so this has given him the opportunity to, you know, hold on to the spotlight a little bit longer while he's kind of relevant for now. And he, you know, is desperate for Knight Rider to make a comeback. And I don't think he's necessarily looking to star in it, but he just wants to see the show come back, whether it's in a movie or a TV series, and get his due diligence, as it hasn't been able to be remade properly yet, despite the fact that they've tried a few times. He doesn't come out and say that he wants it to be R-rated, but he does say that he wants it to be kind of like Logan, where it's a little bit darker. And he does throw it out there of having himself as Knight Rider in this instance by having the aged version of the character. David Hasselhoff's not really the kind of serious actor who I think can pull off this aged role in the same way that a Hugh Jackman could, or you know, another veteran actor. So I'm not really sure that he can accomplish what he thinks this movie should. And I'm also not even really sure that there's a big enough fan base that wants to see David Hasselhoff do something like that. Unless, of course, he could totally pull like a Mickey Rourke and do like have like a other wrestler moment, and you know, it could be something. It could be something amazing for sure. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
I also don't think there's any interest in the Knight Rider franchise. I mean, they tried to bring it back as a TV show a few years back, and that kind of skid out really fast. And it just seems to me that he's, you know, just trying to make something happen. And it also seems to me that he kind of, all this talk seems reflective of his experience with the Baywatch movie, which he kind of keeps on saying in interviews. He doesn't want it to be jokey. He doesn't want it to be, you know, a parody of Knight Rider. And it almost seems like a reaction to what he experienced with Baywatch. And it doesn't seem like he liked the Baywatch movie that much.
No, he definitely did it, and that's a big part of where he's at in his headspace right now. And plus, it's not like he has much going on outside of the stuff that he used to star in, so he just keeps trying to, you know, get people to pay attention to that and listen to what he has to say about those properties.
Okay, so over the weekend, a few video game trailers were released, one for Star Wars Battlefront 2 and another for Jurassic World Evolution. You wrote both of them up for the site. What do we know about both?
Yeah, Gamescom is happening right now at this big video game conference and exhibition where video game companies are showing off all sorts of new footage, announcing new games and that kind of thing. So we're starting to see a lot of new titles announced, and since a lot of them do have ties to movies, that's something that we're pretty interested in. And so this November, we'll bring Star Wars Battlefront 2. It's the sequel to the game that came back for current generation systems back when The Force Awakens was coming to theaters in 2015. And it's a little bit different this time. They've fixed some of the issues that you just complained about in the original game, including adding a campaign mode and changing up the gameplay a little bit. And over the weekend, they finally showed us footage of the new and seemingly improved Starfighter Assault game mode, which allows you to obviously be inside of a starfighter and partake in many of the big battles that happen in space throughout the Star Wars universe. And as we've learned from previous trailers, this video game spans all eras of Star Wars. So we get everything from battles in the prequels involving ARC 170 fighters and droid fighters to stuff that happens after Return of the Jedi when the Death Star 2 explodes and there are battles between X-Wings and TIE fighters among the debris of the exploded Death Star. And we also get to see some of the newer stuff as there's a battle that happens in the unknown regions where Poe Dameron is leading an X-Wing squadron. And we also get a very quick shot of Kylo Ren's TIE silencer flying into battle as well. So we get to see a lot of cool action. It also does some things that with characters that we haven't seen them do before. We get to see Yoda flying a Jedi starfighter, which hasn't been seen in the movies at least. And in this particular moment in the trailer, he's flying after Darth Maul in his Sith Interceptor. So there's plenty of stuff here that Star Wars fans have never gotten really to experience before, which is part of the appeal of the game. And it looks like it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, this is the type of game that I would like to play, but I know I would be really bad at, especially since the story mode is going to be completely canon, and that scene in spanning that entire era of Star Wars stories is interesting. The one I would actually like that I think I would be good at, I don't have the system, is Jurassic World Evolution. What do we know about this game?
Actually, you will be able to play this one because Jurassic World Evolution is a game that will be available on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4.
Oh, I have PlayStation 4. I mean, I don't use it. My girlfriend uses it. But now that I know that it's going to be available, this is definitely a game I would like to try out. Why don't you explain it to the people listening?
Yeah, so if you've ever played any of those older computer games like Roller Coaster Tycoon or SimCity, that's essentially what Jurassic World Evolution is going to be. It will allow you to create your own dinosaur theme park in the same vein of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, where you have to maintain it and keep the dinosaurs in their enclosures and keep visitors coming in, all that sort of thing. The trailer itself does feature footage, and it's rendered footage, so it's not actual gameplay, of a T-Rex escaping an enclosure by breaking through a fence that's being worked on by a construction crew. He eats a dude, goes after another pack of dinosaurs and throws one of them around before you pan up and you see that this is all happening at a fully operational theme park that looks just like Jurassic World. It does show, like a cursor erasing part of the jungle area and putting in this facility where a load of people hops into a helicopter to try and chase down the T-Rex. So it's definitely going to have the same kind of gameplay where you're building your own theme park and overseeing it in a sort of, God's eye view, if you will, of the entire theme park. And I think, go ahead.
I just wonder how often things are going to go wrong at this dinosaur theme park. And when things go wrong, is that going to cause bad publicity? So now people aren't going to be coming to the park. So I mean, I'm wondering, yeah, because in SimCity, you used to have sometimes King Kong would come or, crazy earthquakes or whatever. But that was very rare. But I think with dinosaurs, that would probably happen more often.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be part of it, is making sure that your park is safe enough so that the dinosaurs don't get out, or if they do, you're able to keep it under control quickly so that people don't die. Because the part of the game will be figuring out how to keep your attendees interested in your park, which will include an element that allows you to bioengineer your own dinosaur hybrids. Because that worked out so well for the people at Jurassic World.
Yeah. The thing about this kind of game is I wish it was for mobile platforms, because I feel like if something like this was on my phone, I'd be, building the park in between, waiting for a movie or, whatever. But I feel like something like this might be too small for a console nowadays. I mean, I'm not a console gamer anyways, but I feel like this is kind of more of a, like, almost like a Farmville-like thing that I would like to do, just in my downtime.
Yeah, but I think by putting it on console, it can be a little bit more intensive as far as, the graphics and the actual gameplay is concerned, because while the basic concept does feel very much like a Farmville or what's the name of that military game that Arnold Schwarzenegger is always promoting?
I do not know. Clash of Clans?
No, that's something different. It's like this, the idea is that like you have this military base and you're building it up with turrets to keep enemies from getting in and that kind of thing. It's a very simple game engine.
Yeah, but all those games are like a money suck. It's all like pay money to get this done quicker, or you got to wait. I think that's another part of the reason why that they don't want to do mobile is because that's what they would have to do. And this is a game I think they want that has much more potential to be bigger on a console, especially because if you were looking at a big park on your phone, your iPad, you're going to be doing a lot of scrolling around a big swatch of land as opposed to playing it on your big TV at home and having a much larger viewing area. For sure. I know some people that have already maxed out their Simpsons tapped out areas. In today's feature presentation, we're going to have a discussion of Sunday night's Game of Thrones episode and this season as a whole. I'm going to bring on with me Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's up?
And Jacob Hall.
Hello.
So Ben, what is going on with Game of Thrones?
So Game of Thrones, we've already talked about the increased pacing, but now I feel like the show is coming dangerously close to jumping the shark with the most recent episode, Beyond the Wall. This is the one in which the characters are at Swatch by the Sea, and they pass on into the Great White North, and there's a whole battle with the undead, and the dragons come in. I mean, this is like full-on spoiler territory here. I was cringing throughout this entire episode. I thought this was one of the toughest things to watch that Game of Thrones has done in a very long time. Jacob, I know you wrote a review of the episode at slashfilm.com, and you were a little bit kinder, but you also sort of sensed some of these frustrations too, right?
Yeah, I did. I'm actually a lot kinder than you. I wouldn't use the phrase jumping the shark, but I would say this episode does display what Game of Thrones does so well, but also what it's been doing so poorly this season. Because I love these characters to death. I loved watching them. I don't even mind the machinations it took to bring these people together for this episode, with this men on a mission story Beyond the Wall. And in order to be able to see Jorah and Jon and the Hound, all these characters who shouldn't be together is so cool and so satisfying. But I take issue with the numerous leaps it's asking us to make in a row. It's asking us to believe that Gendry can run back to Eastwatch on his own in an unspecified amount of time, send a raven, and Daenerys can return with dragons to save the day. But there's no sense of time or pace to this. It seems to happen almost overnight, which goes against how carefully the show has established geography before and how important that's been to the show beforehand. And it's a case where the show is starting to sacrifice its own internal logic in order to feed these big special effects moments. And I love these big special effects moments, and I would love to say that these moments are more important than logic, but this was a case where it just went one step way too far for me.
Yeah, and this is something that you and I have talked about on previous episodes of this podcast too, where like we were talking about, we're willing to sort of push some of the logic stuff to the side as long as the moments and the connections really land for us, right? And Brad, I'm wondering where you stand in this whole thing. What do you think about the way the show has changed so drastically this year? Is it connecting with you more, or is it frustrating you more?
On some level, it's definitely felt a little more exciting. I like the fact that the faster pace allows for the story to move a little bit faster. As much as I have enjoyed Game of Thrones, and I do appreciate the power that comes with the slow burn of everything, as whether it's because of how long it takes people to get from one location to another, or because of the long game each of these characters are playing and trying to win this Game of Thrones, if you will. But I do, on an entertainment level, appreciate how fast-paced the story is, because it affords us seeing these things that would otherwise take probably another season for us to get to. And but at the same time, though, I do find myself wondering the same things you're talking about as far as, like, can Gendry really make it back that quickly in order for, Daenerys to hop on her dragon and come save the day? And how fortunate are we that, Jon Snow can again be saved by a character who we haven't seen for a long time, just in the nick of time. And he happens to have a horse who can last the entire way in this bitter cold and storm all the way back to the wall. It can be tough to swallow, but I think the coolness that is coming with the story as the White Walkers are getting closer to all of our characters and the larger war amongst all these kingdoms is coming together is, I think, worth that sacrifice on some level.
Yeah, I wish I could. I mean, I see what you're talking about, and I think you are representative of a lot of Game of Thrones fandom right now. A lot of people are more willing to, they like, generally speaking, those big sort of oh shit moments. And for me, this episode in particular, I'm a sucker for those moments as much as the next person, but I just didn't really think that Beyond the Wall delivered those moments in a cohesive or really interesting way. I was like, I couldn't figure out who was who out there in the snow. It was like they showed us that just 7 people were walking out at the end of last episode, and then all of a sudden there are these like red shirts who are out there just to die, and you never know who they are. It doesn't matter when they die. And then, I mean, there are just so many things about this episode that didn't make any sense. Like, why didn't Beric and Thoros use their fire swords to stay warm at night, or to melt the ice to keep like a safety ring around them before everyone attacked? Or the whole thing with Dany swooping in at the end is ludicrous to me. And even when one of her dragons dies, like, why don't we get a bigger reaction from her? She should have been like Anna Gunn in that Breaking Bad episode Ozymandias, where she just like completely loses her shit and breaks down. This is like one of her children, and she doesn't cry, she doesn't scream, she doesn't do anything. And if the Whites can't swim, how did they attach giant chains to a sunken underwater dragon? I don't know. There are just so many questions. Where is Bran in all this? What is he doing? I wish that the spectacle was worth it to me, but I'm so bogged down with all these questions that the show used to address head on and answer, and that's what I loved about it. And now it's becoming something totally different, and it's supremely frustrating to me.
I have a question for you guys. Now, I'm not a big Game of Thrones fan like you guys are. You have that big oh shit moment at the end where you see the dragon has now become a White Walker, right? Essentially. Right. So, oh my god, holy shit, that's awesome. But then you think about it and you're like, so what now? There's going to be this dragon fighting among the White Walkers breathing ice? Like, it just doesn't make much sense. Like, how is that going to be exciting in the future other than that moment?
Oh, you have a giant zombie dragon fighting on the side of a zombie army, and that's actually pretty exciting to me. That's all I need.
I don't know.
I guess I'm just a lot more positive than Ben here. Maybe not quite as positive as Brad, but I guess it's important to note that no matter what happens, Game of Thrones could belly flop spectacularly in its final season after this, and it'll still be my favorite thing ever. I was just telling the guys earlier today that this is my Star Wars. This is the thing that I love unconditionally. So when I complain about it, it's strictly from a place of love, and I am not mad at it. I'm disappointed. I love it enough that I want to pick it apart and want to talk about why this didn't work. I wouldn't even say jump the shark was a phrase that crossed my mind last night. I just felt like this was a case where they bent to blockbuster spectacle when I wanted more characters. As I wrote in my review today, my favorite moments of the episode was not the big zombie fight at the end where heroes having their last stand against the army, but when they're all walking to the battle and all the various characters are essentially pairing off and having little moments together and trading stories and seeing how these characters from such different worlds are bouncing off each other. And that, to me, is what Game of Thrones is all about. And on that level, the episode is still delivered. I still liked watching these characters be together on the screen, even when logic failed them. So I'm still on board to the end. And I may sound negative at times, but this is still my favorite show. And it's my favorite fictional world of all time.
Brad, do you have any final words?
I was with Jacob, too, where... responding to Peter, that moment when they bring the dragon up, I was like, oh my god, like that's going to be insane to see, like that dragon going up against what Daenerys has left, and the battle with the White Walkers will probably be a TV.
But what changes the dragon now that it's a White Walker dragon?
I mean, it's controlled by them, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to you have to look at the White Walkers themselves and look at how strong the Night King is and what he can do, and think about the fact that he's given. So
it just becomes like evil Superman. It's not like he's now going to be breathing ice and freezing things.
I think there's a very good chance that it's breathing ice. I think it's going to be like a Harry Potter sort of scenario where like the wizard, wand powers are like meeting in the middle and different colors and stuff. I can very easily see them doing like a literal battle of ice and fire with an ice breathing dragon. That would not surprise me at all.
And we had an entire episode earlier this season where the entire last 15 minutes was saying, "Hey, here's what one dragon can do to an entire army of people," and now we have an enemy with no remorse and no holds barred that has a dragon. So it's less about the dragon being a zombie and maybe more about having one dragon like having an atom bomb.
Yeah, it's more about them having a weapon. David Chen, who's part of Slash Film, editor at large, he runs a Game of Thrones podcast, a very popular Game of Thrones podcast that gets 100 times more listeners than this podcast, called The Cast of Kings, which you should subscribe to if you like Game of Thrones. Sunday night, he periscoped, basically saying his first impression is this is the worst episode of the entire series for him.
Wow.
Now, is he being overdramatic here?
God, I mean, I think the other guys, the other guys would say yes, and I would say that that's a strong statement, but it's probably not too far off from my own personal thoughts. I mean, there have been other episodes that I haven't liked, but none have been so like just deep within my core. I'm watching it, and everything about it is screaming, "This is wrong" to me, more than Beyond the Wall, the most recent episode. So I think I'm on Dave's side here.
Okay, then let me just ask the two remaining. What is worse than this episode?
The episodes that are worse are the ones that can't remember. The ones where they're literally twiddling their thumbs because they have to kill the 10-hour count. It's episodes where literally nothing happens and things are slowing down, and I can't tell you their episode titles. Beyond the Wall, for all that's wrong with it, I won't be able to forget Beyond the Wall. I won't forget when I watched it. I won't forget watching when the dragon died. I won't forget being frustrated by it. I won't forget having this conversation about it. At the very least, Beyond the Wall is an interesting failure, a frustrating failure, and one that I found frequently interesting and fun. Whereas there are episodes of Game of Thrones that are just slogs, and they're just setting things up. And for me, an interesting failure will always be more interesting than a slog.
Okay, guys, I want to thank you all for having this discussion on the podcast. Jacob, you can find more of his work on Slash Film and on Twitter at Jacob S. Hall. Ben Pearson, you can find on Slash Film and on Twitter at Ben Pears. And Brad Oman, who has to be complicated, you can find on Slash Film and on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton. And his podcast, Go Flicks Yourself. And you can find me at Slash Film on Twitter. And if you like this show, please go to iTunes. Please rate us, review us. That helps us out quite a bit. And we'll see you tomorrow.